Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Councillor Paul Heinrich, and I'm chairing this meeting of the Development Committee on Thursday, the 13th of June, 2024. For anyone who hasn't attended one of these meetings before, the officers who provide and present our report sit either side of me, top table. In front of me in the central area sit the members of the committee who'll be making decisions on the items on the agenda. 2024. For anyone who hasn't attended one of these meetings before, the officers who provide and present our report sit either side of me, table. In front of me in the central area sit the members of the committee who will be making decisions on the items on the agenda. For anyone who hasn't attended one of these meetings before, the officers who provide and present our report sit either side of me, table. In front of me in the central area sit the members of the committee who will be making decisions. Okay, are you getting feedback now? No, we're okay. Okay, let's get back to. Can our officers please to introduce themselves?
Good morning, my name is Jeff Lyon. I'm the Development Manager at North Norfolk.
Morning, everyone. Joseph Barrow, Senior Planning Officer.
Neil White, Committee Officer.
Morning, I'm Matthew Atwell, Household Planning Assistant.
Fiona Croxton, Solicitor to the Council.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome members of the public, both here and viewing this remotely. For members of public and parish councillors who are registered to speak, I will call you to the front to the microphone at the end of this bench. When it is your turn, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Before we start the formal business, the usual notices on fire alarm. We're not expecting a drill today. If the alarm sounds, it is for real, in which case please follow officers, exit by the marked exits and go to the front car park or to the flagpole at the rear. Obviously do not use the lift. If you have a mobile phone with you, please could you switch it to silent or off. If we run over time, we'll take a short break around about 11. And if we do so, any members of the public around should not be speaking to councillors during that break. Toilets, if you haven't found them, are out in the foyer. Okay, item 2, apologies. Substitutes, please. Nope.
I've received apologies from Councillors Beattie, Brown, Kim Toy, Pitch Tillett and Netherway.
Substitutes.
Councillor Ringer for Councillor Beattie, Councillor Boyle for Councillor Toy and Councillor Patterson for Councillor Netherway.
Thank you. Item 4 is items of urgent business. I have none. Do you have any, Neil? Thank you. The order of business will be as outlined on your papers. Are there any declarations of interest? Yes, Councillor Holiday.
I'm going to abstain from item 10. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. Which item is it? Number 7. I know of the landowner, but don't feel I need to abstain as they're not a friend or a family or close associate.
Thank you. Right, we'll therefore move directly to the first item, agenda item 7, Bacton PF/23/1612, 47 affordable dwellings. When you're ready, Mr. Barron.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good morning, councillors, members of the public. Yes, this is item 7. and is a hybrid planning application on land east of Coast Road in Bacton. The report you'll notice is generally split into two. So the first section of that is detailed consent for 47 affordable homes with associated infrastructure and open space on the northern part of the site, which I'll show soon. And the second element of that is outline consent with all matters reserved for the delivery of open space and car parking on land to the south of the village hall. Some matters for verbal updates for the committee. You'll note in the report that there is mentioned that the obligations standards from the County Council are to be updated. We have had a response that is available online now, and the response reads, as the last response was submitted less than 3 months ago, the response dated the 13th of March remains valid. Our standards were delayed slightly and will be uploaded this week, and they will be emailed around later this week. We're of the view, and the recommendation to you today, members, is that we will determine based on the figures that are in front of us, considering that we brought it to committee at this time, and the representation received states that that response is in fact valid. We have also had a late representation discussing potential impacts upon the historic environment that you may or may not have seen. We have done an additional section, a written section here to provide you with an update. The closest listed buildings are just to the southwest of the, essentially just to the west of the village hall there, between that blue pin and that pink pin. There's a cluster of 3 listed buildings there. Officers are of the view that the proposals may result in some harm to those heritage assets, but the degree of harm resulting from that proposal is considered to be extremely modest. And as such, as is the exercise that we've so often done at this committee, members are invited to weigh that into the balance of their decision making against the public benefits that may arise from the scheme. So in considering the scheme now and moving on, you can see the site location on the screen there. The field is sort of wraps around the village hall there. The residential development and the dwellings are largely proposed to the north of the village hall, and the open space delivery and car parking is proposed to the south of the village hall. And there you can see the location plan indicating the detailed consent to the north and the outline consent to the south. So the key elements of the housing development, the detailed consent for you to consider, delivery of 47 affordable homes, the access road which loops round within the site and connects in and out of Coast Road, attenuation ponds to the site frontage, as well as quite a large landscaped area to the south and east, 4 traffic tables to calm traffic speeds and provide pedestrian crossing facilities, as well as pedestrian connectivity throughout the open space and landscapes area, as well as connectivity to the north and south of the sites. The accommodation schedule there for your information, just showing the various types, bungalows, houses, and their affordable mechanisms and how they will be occupied. The policy map, this figure is available in the report, but I thought it was important to raise it at the meeting today. So anything in the yellow is deemed as countryside under the current adopted local plan. Anything in the purple hatching is currently within Bacton's adopted residential area. And within the green line is within the settlement boundary. So you will note that the front portion of the site, both the outline area and the detailed consent area, is within the settlement boundary. The rear portion of the site is not within the settlement boundary and is within the countryside. The housing master plan here for you shows the layout that you will be considering today, and you'll notice that access road runs around and loops back to that T-junction towards the site frontage, with cul-de-sacs projecting to the outside of that area. The landscaped area as well, you'll see, is provided to the south and east, with that footpath just to the rear of the village hall, and there's also a footpath up to the very northwest corner, just connecting into Coast Road near the chip shop. The boundary treatment plan for you, evidencing mostly closed board fencing for marking the gardens. The pink lines also show that there will be more ornate brickwork boundary treatments in those areas that are more visually prominent and on the site frontage, on the road frontages. Acoustic fencing is also proposed to the southwest corner, mutually beneficial for both the village hall and the dwellings that are in that southwest corner there. Some sample of elevations on site, giving you a sense of the materials and form that are being considered today. And now moving through the site photos, you can see the site frontage. This is from moving up Coast Road from in front of the village hall, just opposite the village hall entrance, really there. The chip shop in the distance looking northwards. From the northwest corner on the right-hand side of that photo is the current screen, the current hedgerow and trees which surround the village hall. And you'll see that it is currently laid to arable farmland. Looking up across the northern boundary there again from that same corner, that's near the chip shop car park where the footpath would connect into Coast Road. Now looking from Mill Lane, which is the road that provides access to mostly sort of chalet and tourism, some tourism properties on the on the east side of the development. This is looking back west. You'll notice that we are from a slightly higher vantage point, and the site does slope gently away to the site frontage with the gas terminal in view, as well as the church. Yes, this currently is a welcome view, but you will understand as well that there is a settlement. The settlement boundary does encompass the frontage of the site, and we also have that significant landscaping area to the east of the site, just to try and preserve that relationship where possible. So the key issues that members are invited to consider when looking at the detailed element of this planning application is the principle of development, the design and layout of the development, its effect on character and appearance, residential amenity, and that's the relationship within the site and with its neighbouring developments as well. Highway safety, ecology and biodiversity, and the obligations. And this is the full recommendation for the detailed planning element, subject to the following conditions, as well as also the contributions that are listed in the report, and any other conditions that are felt necessary delegated to the Assistant Director. So the outline element of the scheme is the area to the south of the village hall. You'll notice the retained agricultural access on the very southern portion, just ensuring that the access is maintained to the field. The car parking area is proposed to be offered, as well as the overall site, to the parish council as part of the legal agreement. The footpath provision connecting to the housing development at the north and providing full pedestrian connectivity away from Coast Road from the southern extremity of the overall site to the northernmost extremity. Public open space, including play area, as well as hedgerows and landscaping. And this is from the cafe car park at the very southern end of the site, looking to the north. You'll see again those trees across the middle of the site there are those that surround the village hall. And this is the existing access, currently grass-created, that could certainly be potentially be used to provide for the car park. And the indicative site plan for the outline development does show this approximate location for the access. So the recommendation for the outline planning element is approval with all matters reserved. So the full recommendation, members, is approval of the detailed planning application subject to Section 106 agreement, with the various planning conditions that we saw in the previous slide and are outlined in the report. It is also recommended that the outline consent be approved as well, with all matters reserved to deliver the car parking, public open space, play area and footpath. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now move to public speakers. First is the parish council, Elaine Pugh. Here to come to the microphone, please. You have 3 minutes from when you start speaking.
Good morning, councillors. The parish council strongly objects to this planning application. Since initial discussions with the enabling team for a small development of 12 to 14 homes at this allocated site, this project has exploded and morphed into 47 homes, nearly 300% increase. Bolted onto an allocated site, there are now an additional 33 to 35 units in open countryside. How can this be allowed to happen? The initial development discussed was to secure properties for local Bacton residents and nearby villages as an exception scheme. It was not to serve external applicants, and this is why the council worked proactively with the enabling team. How can the community trust the planning system? The community are rightly aggrieved and really disappointed in this application. We understand that this land is allocated under the LDF. However, it was not for 47 homes. It was allocated for 20 dwellings, not 47. The rest of the area is an open countryside to which the other 33 to 35 homes encroach. Whether affordable or not, this should not be allowed. The village simply cannot sustain or support this level of growth. This is outlined in our written objections. We realise that this development will be forced upon the parish with little thought or consideration on the impact on the daily lives of the community we all serve. We object to the additional 33 to 35 units in the countryside. It is the local community who have to bear the brunt of this overdevelopment. There are no benefits to the community apart from a piece of open space for the parish council to maintain and upgrade as a car park. It is noted in the planning officer's report that monies are being allocated to various other authorities, total S106 in excess of 523,000. Zilch for the parish council, for the community. We have asked for specific items to be agreed for the open land. However, we note that these are for reserved matters. There is no allocation of funding for these works. How can this be fair, balanced and agreed by the planning committee? There must be a provision within this development for a financial contribution to be paid directly to the parish council, which aligns with the payments being received by other external authorities. Bacton has already had substantial growth with 24 new affordable homes in Gooch Close, and the community financially received nothing by way of a 106 agreement. Nothing, zilch. In closing, we object to the additional 33 to 35 units in the countryside. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no objecting speakers. Supporting speaker, Mr. John Long.
Thank you. My name's John Long. I'm the planning agent for Flagship, who are the applicants for the site. Thank you, committee members, for allowing me to speak. Perhaps before I get on, I'll just address a couple of points raised by the parish council, and particularly in terms of how the scheme has evolved. We did go and speak to the parish council back in 2022, and we did present the scheme as a 50, well, it's up to a 50 unit scheme at that time with a mixture of affordable housing. Now, in terms of the contributions and how the open space will work, our intention, Flagship's intention, would be that open space land is to be offered to the parish council. If they choose to take it, they will be able to draw down the off-site open space contribution that is being made. So, in our view, that off-site contribution that is featured in the section 106 part of the committee report would be available for the parish council to draw down to implement and maintain that site. So it's a fairly reasonable contribution there. So that's how we would see that working. Now, in terms of the scheme itself, what perhaps didn't come across in the officer's report was the considerable amount of engagement we've had with your planning officers and your housing office to get the scheme to what you have in front of you today, which we hope you can see is a high quality scheme that is sensitive to the area. It is quite low density. We note that the council, the officer's report highlights this, but we think that that's more reflective of the area. One of the key points when we were involved in discussions with your officers was that the scheme needed to look like a comprehensive whole and not be piecemeal, with part of it certain type of affordable housing, the other part of it exceptions housing. So that's why it's been treated with, and it's been designed and looked at as a whole. We have tried to address comments have arisen through the process. where we can. There were some concerns that during the pre-application process that there were links through to Mill Lane and that they've been removed. So we have tried where we can to address as many comments as we can, and we hope that what's been presented in front of you is something that the council will be able to support. It is a culmination of quite a lot of work between your offices and ourselves. And sitting in reception today, I did notice your corporate plan on the wall, and a key part of that I noted was addressing affordable housing needs, and hopefully the scheme is printed out and go some way to addressing that. I know the needs are very significant and it's a small proportion, but we're here to help. Flagship are here to help in terms of delivering your corporate plan, your aim to achieve affordable housing. Thank you. If you have any questions, members, I'm here to help. I've got somebody from Flagship if there's any questions that they need to answer as well.
Thank you, Chair. This is actually quite a huge development for a relatively small village. I understand the need for affordable housing, but I do feel that this will drastically change Bacton. We're going to have modern buildings quite close to listed buildings. And despite the traffic survey, I am concerned about the volume of traffic that will be coming and going from Coast Road. It's a very busy road at the best of times because it's the main access route for the gas terminal. I just think it's too much. And schools, are the local schools able to accommodate all the additional children? Doctors is a problem. And dentists, well, don't even go there. I'm just really concerned about the infrastructure of the whole thing. And can we guarantee, please, that local people local to Bacton and neighbouring villages will get priority? They must get priority. Else it all, Bacton is going to have to tolerate this huge development without any benefit. I don't think there's much more that I can say, actually. I know a lot of the villagers do object to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just got a few list of questions. I suppose being the councillor for the Haysborough ward and seeing Haysborough fall into the sea, I think 13 metres last autumn. Could we have a bit more detail on where you think this is? I had a look at the flood statement. I get it's high ground, but I'm just a bit nervous that the sandscaping scheme that went in 2019 might have a 15-20 year lifespan. If that sand gets washed away, what happens to the seawall that's there? Is it going to be undermined? And because I think the site's about 160 metres from the sea, so I was just a bit nervous, or thought that should be sort of just really understood. I understand it's not going to flood in terms of because of the height of the ground, but in terms of coastal erosion, that was a concern. Where were we on density in terms of what was the density, and where does that fit in planning, in the planning policy? The car park, how do you make sure it doesn't attract antisocial behaviour, and what are the rules around that? And then what was the rationale, or is the demand there for 47 properties? What's the rationale instead of 20? What's the rationale for the 47? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for those questions, Councillor. trying to take them in order. In terms of the coastal erosion concerns, yeah, I think it could be certainly considered to be a coastal location. When doing the assessment, it didn't come up within any of our coastal erosion constraint areas. As such, there wasn't a comment required from our coastal team. Essentially, I would be led to believe that in terms of planning policies that it's not deemed to be a reasonable risk of coastal erosion within the 100-year time span. And as such, there was no real cause for concern for coastal erosion in particular. With regards to the densities, on page 13, we have outlined that it's approximately 16.8 dwellings per hectare. This does fall short of the 30 per hectare that is the target within HO7. The housing allocation policy did propose 20 dwellings across a 1.9 hectare site, and that was 10.5 dwellings per hectare. So we have achieved greater density than the allocated sites suggested. But I think as well the reason for reducing the densities here is also to reflect or try to preserve the rural character of the site as best as possible. Understanding, of course, that it is development, but yeah, it's trying to not overpopulate that site. With regards to the car park, I would suggest that some of the details with regards to gates and management of that car park could come forward at reserve matters stage. It's just an outline application with all matters reserved at the moment. If it is in fact the car park to the south that your question is referring to. And then your last question, sorry, Councillor Patterson.
It was a bit about the rationale about the parish council mentioned that they were expecting about 20 properties and there's 47 proposed.
Yes, I believe that it was subject to quite extensive pre-application discussions, as I understand it. I don't have anything at the moment that leads me to working out why 47 was the amount that we reached in particular.
I mean, as Joe said, there's been lots of discussion with our housing team colleagues on this proposal before the application came in. So it's a housing-led, affordable housing-led proposal. So the need for that has obviously come from the local assessment of the housing officers that there's a need for it locally. Obviously, if there wasn't a need for it, they wouldn't be considering spending money on a development like this. So it's based on needs that's been identified by our housing team. And this scheme will help to meet substantially that need locally. There was a point made about can we secure this for the residents of the parish. Now there's two elements to this. So you've got the allocation of the site for 20 dwellings. Now normally under allocations you can't place a restriction that says it has to be for local needs only. So that 20, the normal expectation is that would be open to anyone from the district to be able to apply for those dwellings. However, with exception schemes, so we're in a sense, we've got two parts. We've got the allocation site, and then we've got in effect an exception scheme added to that process. And as the applicant has said, they've tried to develop it as one rather than it being an add-on to the other. But the exceptions housing, that's the bit where you can require a condition and legal agreements that make it available for people in the parish first, and then the adjoining parishes before it goes out to the wider district. So that's the way we normally would deal with an exception scheme. So we've got a bit of a hybrid here, but that doesn't mean it's not possible. It doesn't mean it's not possible to secure as the parish has required some elements of, and actually a larger proportion element would be for local needs, because that's the bigger part of the site for just outside of the boundary. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question in terms of need. It's led from the housing colleagues.
Just to follow up, so it's 160 metres from an eroding coast and the coastal team haven't been consulted.
That's correct. When we do the constraints map at the start of any assessment, it's outside of any of our constraint areas for coastal erosion.
And then just coming back to the car park, I was just thinking, is it going to become a proxy campsite with camper vans on it? But that gets picked up in the reserve matters.
Yeah, that's correct. Any such questions and issues like that can be addressed at the reserve matter stage.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
I mean, just to add that, I mean, something like a car park management plan, we could request as part of the outline application, which would then be secured as under the reserve matters. So it's just a bit like we've had other applications where we've had it concern about access. It's about managing traffic using that facility. So a car park management plan would be a good way to secure that. We then have control over how it's operated. And just in terms of the coastal erosion point, obviously we do have a piece of national infrastructure not far away from here, and that obviously that was a critical asset that led to the landscaping scheme. So I would be very surprised if that was allowed to erode to a point that would put at risk that national infrastructure. And obviously a byproduct of that protection is that the residents of Bacton and beyond would have benefited from that landscaping project.
We can't assume they're not going to roll that back, though. You know, they can bring that inland.
I mean, the coastal erosion constraints, they've been around for a number of years. So the plan that shows the sort of the 125-year and 50-year coastal erosion points, we are expecting that document to be updated at some point. I believe that maybe the end of this year we get an updated document showing those updated lines. I've had nothing before me that says that the line will include this site. Obviously things do change and we have to sort of adapt to changes that happen. But say at this moment in time, it's outside of the coastal erosion constraint zone, which is why we haven't engaged our coastal team.
Okay, thank you. Councillor John Toy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A little bit more actually down that theme, but I just wondered who would be responsible for and the monitoring of the attenuation ponds, because we know a lot of any erosion goes on from land-based water and not necessarily just from the sea. So I'd like to know what the restriction, not restrictions, but the regulations that are put around maintaining the attenuation ponds, because if they silt up, they're not going to attenuate as much, and we know that rainfall's getting greater. So if we could have an answer on that first. Thank you.
As far as I understand, the flagship housing will take on management of open space on site. So if it's an on-site piece of infrastructure, then I understand that flagship will take responsibility for maintenance of that. Issues of maintenance are normally secured as part of a legal agreement or conditions. So we would get that particular detail secured, because if it's not flagship, they would need to pass it on to a management company or somebody else to take on responsibility. We would need to make sure we're comfortable with whoever's taking it on and the regimes that they're putting in place.
So just to confirm that we would have something in place to ensure that they are maintained. Okay, so in which case, Mr. Chairman, having considered it and the balance, and I hear the concerns, but I also think that we haven't talked about the opportunities. When you get more people, there's more services. I noticed there was comments in the report about bus services. Mr. Google tells me there's a bus every 30 minutes both ways, which some of us would love to have. So actually I'm prepared to propose the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Chair, thank you very much. Can we just go back to the allocation versus the exception? So we've got allocated 20 houses, an exception 27 houses, which is quite big for an exception site. With the allocation site, what guarantee have we that they're going to be affordable in perpetuity? Because I see there's an awful lot of shared ownership houses compared to affordable rent, which actually isn't the percentage that we want. We actually want rent rather than a shared ownership, I think. But what guarantee have we that when it comes further down the line that those houses on the allocated site will actually be affordable? And will they be affordable in perpetuity? Because they don't presumably have the same regulations about them as they do on an exception site. That was one question. With the open space contribution, I can't see any actual amount given to the open space contribution in the list of numbers that you provide. So I wondered actually what that was when the parish council was asking about what was going to be provided to them for maintenance of the open space. Thank you very much.
Can I suggest, while Joe's looking at the figures, I think perhaps maybe it might be a good question for Fiona in terms of the legal side, in terms of securing the housing, because that's would be part of a 106.
That's fine. I was going to say that the Section 106 agreement will require the affordable housing to, it's got its own schedule to be held in perpetuity. It will set out the 10 years. I'm not quite sure whether in some instances, on the shared ownership properties, you can what they call staircase to 100%. So eventually the parties living in the property can purchase that property. But if they do, we also impose provisions whereby the money has to be rolled back into affordable housing in the district if the final tranche of the property is purchased. So they will always remain as affordable housing effectively in perpetuity, particularly the rentals. But I'm not quite sure whether it's an 80. Sometimes shared ownership is restricted to just an 80% ownership in perpetuity as well. So the Section 106 agreement will control all of that.
Wish to come back, councillor? Yeah.
Yeah, I could answer the open space question from Councillor Holiday there. It's I think it's available on page 19 of the agenda. The financial contribution is approximately £15,000 required for allotments, £114,000 for parks and recreation grounds, approximately 18,800 for child's play space, and 7,600 for youth play space. The total is approximately £155,000. Now, the allotments contribution may not be entirely appropriate to offer to the parish as part of that legal agreement, considering I don't believe there's any proposed allotments as part of the outline consent, but the other contributions could certainly go some way to helping deliver that. And for clarity, it's considered that the detailed planning site does provide more than enough amenity green space and natural green space.
Thank you. Councillor Ringer.
Good morning, thank you. My questions again relate to the housing need, because I think that is a material consideration with this. The strategic housing response that I can see here is dated the 23rd of August last year, so it is quite an old document, and it says that a bit of clarity would be useful here, that the site includes both homes for local need, 12, and homes for general need, 35. On top of that, you've got within that provision 19 shared ownership homes, but it does not specify where those 19 shared ownership homes are going to come out of the local need allocation or the wider general need allocation. So a little bit of clarity on that would be useful. The maps on here don't show which homes are going to be the local need and which ones are not. So it would be really useful to see that, because looking at the settlement boundaries and things that you put up in one of your earlier slides, it did look to me like there were more than 12 properties in what I would say would be the exception zone. So in terms of making an actual decision on this, I don't think that I've been given enough information. I've got a lot of sympathy with what Councillor Porter has said in the parish council, because I think that there is a demonstrable local need. If you look at the strategic housing response, and again, this is nearly a year out of date, it did say that there are 47 households who have the strongest A to C connections to Bacton, but only 12 of these are going to be allocated for local people, and some of those might not even be local people with the most need, because it may well be that they are for part rent, part buy, which won't go to those who need it most, but those who can afford to buy part of that. On the site plan, I see one of the documents, it had unit 1, didn't have anything on it saying whether it was shared ownership or not. So that was just another question on that. And going back to the resale of any that, if they are eventually 100% purchased, so you may end up with 19 homes eventually end up in open market with no local connection required whatsoever if they are to be resold. I know in the past when Flagship Housing have sold off some of their ex-local authority homes, that they have had a covenant attached to it. I can't remember the section, what number it was, but
where you had to have a local connection for X amount of years to be able to purchase those properties. And I just wondered whether if these homes were ever going to come up for market sale at any point, that a covenant such as that might be attached so that there was still a local connection requirement going forward. So I suppose to summarise, I'm a little bit in the dark on it because I support affordable housing. I support exception housing. I do think there's a whole host of benefits that come to communities from it, but rightly, Bacton will want those benefits to associate themselves with those who have the strongest local connection primarily. It seems to me the balance is completely the wrong way. But not knowing how many of these homes are going to be the shared ownership available to let, without that information at the moment, I don't feel like I'm making a decision.
Mr. Long, could you come back to the front, please? Answer these questions. If here's the more appropriate, definitely. It's important that we get these issues clarified before we get nearer to a decision. I think you heard the questions from the.
Yes, yeah. Hi, I'm James Nobbs, Land and Planning Manager at Flagship. So just to go back to square one, obviously this site was allocated, could have come forward as private development as part of the allocation within the local development framework. We're proposing the site as all affordable, but within that allocated element of the site, that isn't subject to the same exceptions, restrictions in terms of affordable housing in perpetuity. So some of the shared ownership dwellings that sit within the allocated portion of the site, we'd expect that homeowners would be able to staircase outwards, and that's an affordable housing product that we support. And with those staircasing restrictions in place, it doesn't gain as much interest with potential buyers and young homeowners. In terms of the exceptions units themselves, they have been dwellings specifically allocated as a result of work with Nikki Debbage and Graham Connolly and the strategic housing team. They are specific to local need within the parish of Bacton. And we've worked hard, not just since the August strategic housing response last year, but in time since then to generate the optimum mix for housing need. I'm not sure if there's any other questions off the back of that.
Yeah, I think that the question still remains really. I don't know. I'm none the wiser as to which of these homes are going to be shared ownership or not in each of the allocated and the exception sites. I don't know how, because it's not referenced to in the strategic housing response, which houses, how they've come to a decision why so many, by the looks of things, so many shared ownership properties are going to be in the exception allocation.
As Joe and Jeff have suggested, off the back of pre-app advice, whereas one point we were looking at one allocated site plus an exception site, it was determined that in terms of placemaking, it would be better if the site was amalgamated between the two. So that it's treated as one whole site. Within the site plan, you can see it's color coded which units are shared ownership and which units are affordable housing, affordable rent, sorry.
But
as you'll see up there,
I just need to see an overlay of where the boundary is between the exception and the allocated.
Yeah,
because that doesn't seem to be.
And as I said, we took a decision to amalgamate and put in one application.
I understand that, but in terms of us being able to demarcate a simple line across there would help me to be able to make a decision ultimately. So I still feel a little bit like I'm not comfortable with how that is. I understand amalgamating it. No objection to that at all. What I don't understand is, when we talk about 47 local families with a housing need A to C and 12 homes allocated to a local need, not all of those 12s are going to go to the local families who most need it, because some of them will go to shared ownership who can afford it most. So it's the community benefit from this, it's just dwindling.
In terms of housing need, that isn't relevant to the shared ownership of the exceptions. So the category A to C and the local housing needs, they are defined under the affordable rented exceptions units. They're on housing need registers. That's data that's been provided by Nikki and Graham and the strategic housing team. And they are plot specific. We've got adapted bungalows within there, all relevant to those people and families on the housing need within the parish.
But that's sorry, okay.
I mean, ultimately, it's about what does our policy say? And our allocations policy for this site expected 20 dwellings on this site. So if you were looking at this and making an assessment, I think there's probably a reasonable assumption that there should be 20 dwellings as part of the allocated site. And anything above that that's in the countryside should be coming under the rural exceptions policy. That's probably, if you're sort of trying to apply sort of a logical approach to this, that's what you would generally expect to see. Now, as a committee, if you're saying you want to alter the balance, that's something that you can obviously make clear to us, and we can go and either seek that. If we can't seek that, we'll bring that back to another committee. But it's obviously we want to get a decision issued today because we're conscious that we don't want to delay delivery of much needed affordable housing. But you're right, we need to get the balance right, because if we don't, then the public benefits of that are less than, we can't honestly say to local residents, you are going to benefit from this if it's not accessible for them to get an affordable housing. So if as a committee you're saying, look, we need to look at the balance here, then that's something that we'll need to raise with the applicant. Obviously they're in today, so I mean that question can be asked: is there anything that can be changed if members do have concern there's not enough public benefit derived from the scheme?
I would just question whether this aspect of the application is a matter between Flagship and our housing team. But other members may think differently. Do you wish to carry on, Councillor Ringer?
Only very briefly, because I know Councillor Vickers wants to speak, but I think that the point is, it still stands. I think that I don't feel there's enough information there about the local need, what is being met. I don't want to be in a position where we defer, particularly because, as you say, affordable housing is something we want to get moving. But I think that it needs to be a stronger case, and from my view, if we're going to approve this, it needs to have the maximum public benefits as possible. So I'll take advice on whether we can have a discussion about that to bring it back as soon as possible, or even whether the applicants can make any suggestions on that. But that's, my concerns still remain on that.
Okay, thank you. You can return to your seat.
Yeah, thanks.
Right. Increasing list here. Councillor MacDonald.
I had two questions, both were asked by Councillor Holiday, so it's a case of asked and answered.
Thank you. Councillor Varley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, I just want to give my thanks to the planning officer for his thorough report and presentation this morning. Changing the subject dramatically, just want to focus on another aspect, which is the eco credentials of these dwellings. I note within the conditions that there's air source heat pumps, or at least further details on those. But it would just be really beneficial to understand what eco credentials would be within this development. Will there be solar panels? Will there be electrical vehicle charging points? It's really important that we strive for good eco developments. I mean, passive housing is incredibly important. We've sat in committee before with some really good, affordable housing developments which were almost passive housing standards. That's incredibly important, obviously, for the sequestration of carbon, getting down our carbon emissions, but also to make it more efficient and cost effective to run. That's really important. So yes, if I can have some further details on those points, please.
And I think many of the measures that would be as part of the design of the dwellings would likely be contained within the design and access statement. Regretfully, it isn't outlined within the report, and I do understand that that would, that would be disappointing that we've not drawn attention to that. So unfortunately, at the moment, I don't have the exact information to hand. So I do know that the agent has also just raised his hand. So.
Yeah, could you come to the front and answer that, please?
Thank you. So as part of the application that was submitted, we submitted an energy statement that assessed energy needs for those houses. Obviously, building regs are changing to make them more efficient anyway, and the requirements EV charging points now is a standard for each dwelling. But in terms of renewables, 10% of the energy needs will be, at least 10% will be coming from renewable sources. So that's PVs and with the air source heat pumps.
So answer your question, councillor?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm really just following on from what Councillor Ringer said, and I have a great deal of sympathy with everything that he said. I think we should have genuinely affordable homes for genuinely local community people. I don't want to defer like Councillor Ringer, but I just think, within this presentation, it could have been a lot clearer. We have before us a map with red blobs and blue blobs. We don't know what those represent, which are the rented homes, which are the ones for sale. And as Councillor Ringer said, a simple line showing which is the exception site would give us all a much clearer view of the community benefit. So I don't know if you could talk us through it to make it clearer to councillors. Thank you.
What's Barrow? Any other question?
Unfortunately, I can't remember from which of the red dots and blue dots are. I'd divvy that one way or another. John may be able to, or James may be able to. Blue dots are the shared ownership.
I didn't hear that. The blue dots are shared.
Yeah. And then with regards to the housing need and trying to identify which come under the exception site and which come under the allocation, I think, as Officer Lyon said, and James, it's important to remember that it is amalgamated under one. So it's not necessarily possible to draw a line, I suppose. It's not as though properties on the west are going to be as part of the allocation and properties on the east are going to be part of the exception site. It has all been designed out. So I do understand that there's questions about local need, but in terms of identifying it quite so simply with a line like that, I don't think that we could quite achieve that.
Thank you. Councillor Hankins, and I'll come back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I note that this is quite a significant development. I question whether it is in proportion to the local area. The planning council have registered, the parish council have registered some very significant objections, not based on not in my backyard, but on really serious infrastructure situations. And I support Councillor Porter. I've got two questions. More often than not, house building comes in front of the infrastructure and that follows later. There are two, I've got two questions here. In terms of the cost of providing infrastructure, there's a sum of in provided for education, and another one for primary and community care. So presumably the education is for the local school. What does that comprise? Is the school being expanded? Is a new school being built? Not for that sum, but, and secondly, primary and community care. Now that would be the GP surgery and the community care element of that. Those sums of money are not significant in my view to support this development. Can you please answer, give me what they buy?
So with regards to the education, the claim is that there's currently space and capacity within the early years and secondary education sectors, but there's insufficient capacity in the primary sector for the children generated from the development. So the money, the education contribution is there to increase capacity at the school or improve educational facilities. So that's what it's earmarked for as per the County Council response dated the 13th of March this year. Similarly with the primary and care contribution, that will be detailed in their own representation. And again, I imagine it is about trying to increase capacity, like you said, and trying to offset and accommodate for any increased demand of those facilities.
Okay, thank you.
It is, of course, for the county council to manage the education provision and the health authority to manage the healthcare provision. But, as I said at the beginning, those are not matters that form part of a planning
No.
decision. It is their obligation to meet the needs of the number of.
No, unfortunately, Mr.
residents
Chairman,
of
they're not always in tandem, but I understand what you
No, but that's unfortunately the way the system works. No, I don't like any more than you do, but that's what happens. Right, Councillor Toy wished to come back and then Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, I didn't know if it would help members that were trying to look for the lines in the planning statement where it shows it as two separate sites in 22 and then the redrawing in 23, January 23, where they brought the sites together so they weren't isolated, that said this bit is exceptions housing and this bit's this. So that it was defined, but by discussions with planning and housing, rather than people feeling isolated in those communities, to make it one community, they brought it together. So there should be, I agree with what you're saying, but there should be a correlation between the houses that were in the exception and how many are now in the overall site. I think that's what we're trying to establish. I think I don't know if that helps, but there is some stuff in the planning statement that may help you to understand that it's drawn as one site now, albeit it was originally as two. So hopefully that might help. That was all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, comments? Okay, Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Chair. I still have concerns about the number of shared ownership and the escape thereof, but we had also concerns raised about the lack of pedestrian access to Mill Lane, I think. So could you just show to me where the pedestrian access exits are from this site, and is there anything from or to Mill Lane?
There isn't anything from or to Mill Lane. That was, I believe, engineered out as part of the extensive pre-application consultation with the local community. So the connectivity outside of the site, as you can see on the master plan in front of you, is in the very, very northwest corner near to the chip shop. The site frontage itself, where the vehicles access the site, and connecting into the outline area of the site in the south corner. But no, there is no connectivity into Mill Lane on the east.
I suspect an unofficial path would appear fairly quickly, but it must be what they are. Okay, if anybody else has any new points to raise, I have a proposal from Councillor Toy to accept the recommendation. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Varley, thank you. There's nothing to add. Yes.
Thank you. Just one last question. Just that footpath in the bottom corner there, does that cut across the car park then, or what will be the car park?
So yeah, that's the indicative layout as, you know, with all matters being reserved. So that's to be confirmed, but the layout there shows that the path will skirt the east of the car park, connecting into the pretty much the southern extremity of the site. So it won't cut across the whole car park. That whole area there is not designated for car parking, just the northern portion. I don't know if that's entirely clear from.
Yes, thank you.
No worries.
Okay. Councillor Ringer. Very
Sorry,
quick.
thank you. It's just off the back of councillor Toy helpfully showing me an earlier plan, which appeared to have in the exception side of before they were amalgamated 18 properties. And if I'm correct in saying this, only 12 properties in this application are going to be allocated to local need. So that number's reduced, has it not? Sorry, can you? I just want, if if you don't mind, if that's
very quickly.
I'm just
We'd like to get to the vote on this.
you know, maybe I'm making a pig's ear of that, but it feels like that's a reduction in numbers to local people.
Microphone.
It's not available here, but we obviously have a plot by plot accommodation schedule which lists property type, the tenure, but also if it's defined as exceptions or within the traditional application area. We'd expect that plot specific tenures, restrictions, designations in terms of local need or district wide need be secured via the 106. There'd be a schedule appended to that. And that's part of the negotiations we would have as a developer with NNDC and their legal representation as well. So that would be secured via the 106 in terms of specifics.
So we. Okay. Yeah, I'm just confused why we're in one document it's saying that there will be 12 homes for local people, and now that matter is actually not going to be 12. We don't know how many it's going to be.
Yeah, and it is still 12, and obviously that's a moving data set as well. We've liaised with strategic housing throughout that, and obviously when it comes to the point of the 106 agreement as well, that will be determined there and then.
Okay, I suppose my own view is I'd like to see that number increased significantly for the local allocation in accordance with the map that had 18 on it. So I suppose I don't want to hold up a planning application, but because I value the affordable housing, I just want more on the exception scheme, and that feels a bit of a brick wall for me at the moment. I'd like to see that 12 increase quite a bit. I think that the document that you have that you're discussing with strategic housing needs to be. Well, I benefit from seeing that before making a decision. So I'm still a little bit
I mean
frustrated on that point.
Okay, I'm going to stop at this point. We have a proposer and seconder. So well, I hear what you said. I said before, there's obviously a lot of scope for further discussion with housing and housing flagship, and I'm sure you'll speak to Sir Tevish at some point. Points have been made and will be recorded in the minutes, of course. Okay, can we go to the vote, please, Neil?
Councillor Boyle,
For.
Councillor Fisher,
4.
Councillor Hankins, Councillor Heinrich,
4.
Councillor Holiday, Councillor MacDonald,
4.
Councillor Mancini Boyle's not with us. Councillor Patterson,
4.
Councillor Ringer,
4.
Councillor Toy,
4.
Councillor Varley, Councillor Vickers.
4.
That's carried, Chairman.
Thank you. The application is approved. We now move on to agenda item 8. C. Pauling. Part retrospective application. Again, get rather too many of these retrospectives, I think, but yeah. Are you ready, Officer Atwell?
Good morning, members. This application is PF 240362, which is an application at St Benedict's on Waxham Road at Sea Pauling. The proposal is for a single-storey extension to the dwelling that's part retrospective. The application site is located southeast of Sea Pauling Village on Waxham Road. The property is a detached dwelling that's accessed via a shared private drive. Due to the application being retrospective, this existing site plan shows the extension which is subject to this application highlighted in red and its relation to the main dwelling. Although the proposal has partly been built, the applicant proposes the additional to the property will provide 2 additional bedrooms with small en-suites, along with a family area and covered walkway. The final elevation subject to this application is following the refusal of the previous application. The applicant has engaged with NNDC and has taken on board advice given to them under the pre-application advice. As such, the proposal is now reduced in height and along with large cladding. In addition to this, the applicant has also taken on board the request from the landscape officers at NNDC and proposed numerous areas of planting denoted for on this plan, which will be secured by means of condition. This is a extract from the sales brochure which illustrates what the pre-development structures were on site. And that has been replaced with the current structure that's there now. Here's a picture of the current structure looking at the southern elevation of it. As you can see, it's to the left of the main dwelling. The photo on the right shows the extension when the roof was completed. The applicant has since removed the roof, which is now the current state is on the left. However, I'd just like to remind members that this isn't the finished structure height and will be reduced if you're minded to approve the plans today. There's further photos of the proposal. The photo on the left is denoted by blue on the plan, and it's taken from the public footpath that goes around the property. And the photo on the right is denoted yellow on the plan, which is taken further around the coastal footpath. And the following 3 slides is to give you a more contextual view of what the property and the extension look like and how they sit within the wider landscape. As such, the main issues are the principle of development, the design of the proposal, the impact on the Norfolk Coast National Landscape, the neighbouring amenities, highways and parking, and flood risk. The application essentially seeks to address the reasons for refusal of the previous application PF 23-1475 by the redesign and reduction in the height of the extension. The application is considered to be acceptable in terms of the principle of development, highways impact, and the effect on the surrounding landscape, and therefore meets the requirements of the core strategy. As such, officer's recommendation is for approval, subject to the conditions outlined or any others necessary by the Assistant Director. Thanks.
Thank you. No town or parish speaker registered, I believe there might have been a written statement. Is that so?
Not from the parish.
Not from the parish, okay. In which case, there's no representation from the parish council. There is no objecting speaker. I have 1 supporting speaker, Ian Riddick. Come to the front, please. And you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay, good. Good morning and thank you for giving me some time to speak. I bought the property with my wife in February 2022, and we've been in Seapawling since 2015. We had a little hut that we had for like family holidays, but we decided we wanted a permanent home. We've got a growing family. My eldest son is about to start studying GCSEs, a younger who soon will be going to high school. My parents, 88 and 86. Spend a significant time, around 2 months a year, down at Seapawling, and it has a real impact on them. And we feel as they're growing older, that's going to only continue. So we bought the property. As I say, it's 2-bedroom, a house with a large extension with 1 bedroom and large living area. What we wanted to do was upgrade it to add a 2nd bedroom there, basically, which would allow our parents to stay for my parents to stay for extended times and not kind of, have privacy and not impact the family. We contacted building control. We worked with the government's permit development guidelines to the letter. But when starting the development, we realized there was no underfloor insulation, there was water ingress, there was damp ingress. And so we took the decision to raise it and then build a new build on the footprint, which we've done. That's where we made our kind of fatal area. We looked at restrictions. We didn't see planning restrictions, and we deeply regret that. We share the view with the planning that it is too big. It's one thing looking at on a plan. When it comes up and it's actually built, it's like, oh my God. So we shared it with planning, and we've worked with Mr. Atwell and the planning department to do everything we can to reduce its impact. We brought the building, the height down significantly. I think now it's about the minimum for slate. I think it's about 8.5 degrees. Because it's on the coastline, I think we're about 19. So we brought it as low as we bring down. As Mr. Atwell said, we're going to cover it in larch. We're going to plant trees of around like 3 meters. So not so well-established trees. So there's an immediate impact to the area. We care deeply about Seapawling, about this area of coastline, about Waxham, which is why we want to be there. We really, really do care about this, and we just want to upgrade to have a good kind of quality of life. And I do hope that the councillors will be able to, can approve this for us. That would be unbelievable. That's me. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. The local member is Councillor Blathwaite, who sent in a written statement.
He has. So this is a response message from Councillor Harry Blathwaite. It says, please accept my apologies for not being present. I have a long-standing commitment for this date regarding flood protection for the area, which includes this site. I must also inform you that I have the honour to be NNDC's representative on the Norfolk Coast Partnership, whose purpose is to manage the AONB. My objection to this development is independent of that body, he says. Sea Pauling Parish Council have asked that I call this planning application in for your critical inspection. This construction was built without referral to the proper planning process as a fait accompli. We are fortunate that we do not have to rely on plans for this construction. The aesthetic is plain to see in its current state. The modest existing building had over time blended into the landscape. Though not of architectural or heritage value, it had the great asset of being unobtrusive. Set against the Sea Pauling and Waxham dunes, this construction is stark within the AONB and the Heritage Coast and Undeveloped Coast. This site is protected by the CRO Act, which is the Countryside and Rights of Way Act. The plans and existing construction do not comply with the Council Design Guide. And it goes on to quote, all development proposals should make efficient use of land, but reflect the characteristics of the site and the local area in their layout. He says, I suggest that this development is not in accordance with this statement or of the aims of North Norfolk as set out in the design guide. In addition, this construction, because of the AONB, is set in a protected landscape. The aims of an AONB is to conserve and enhance its natural beauty. You are responsible for planning and development. How many salami slices do we need to cut from this precious landscape before it is no longer worth preserving or protecting as a local and national asset? Then goes on to say, how long can we call the undeveloped coast if we continue to allow such developments? My view is that this construction neither conserves nor enhances the natural beauty of this precious landscape. This is an area of public recreation, and if we continue as we are, we would be in danger of losing a goose that lays golden eggs in the form of eco and seaside tourism. Many of our visitors are attracted to AONBs as they wish for natural landscape far away from second home ribbon development that so disfigures less fortunate coastal shores. This area is blessed, as well as being in an AONB, it's adjacent to a national park, a National Trust countryside site, a Norfolk Wildlife Sanctuary, and more tripler size than as you can shake a stick at. The stretch of precious dune is not of particular importance for flood and coastal protection. The seawall relieves them from dynamism, and they become more abundant. They do have a host adders and few remaining natterjack toads. The dunes are the highest natural feature in the entire Hickling Ward. The land behind the dunes is at or below sea level, and any development's long-standing prospects are entirely reliant on the seawall and the internal drainage board. Built in 1956, and they're expected to be retained for this epoch, the hold the line policy is not guaranteed for the long term. All developments in this area should be viewed in that light. Property is just outside the shoreline management plan as the border follows the line of the dune. It is only because it relies on the wall's continuous maintenance. Therefore, I would question the sustainability of this project. My request is that you view the application in regards to the statements. And he refers to policy ENV2, which is the emerging local plan ENV2. I won't read it out in full because as he copied it in, but I think the main point Councillor Brathwaite was trying to make there is that point 3 of the emerging local plan that says development proposals should demonstrate that their location, scale, design and materials will protect, conserve and enhance. It finally goes on to say, thank you for your time in this matter. I hope you feel that this is enough to refuse the application. If you require further information or research, a deferred decision may be suitable. I would very much like to be able to present the case in person, as would the Parish Council. I would ask that the costs of enforcement should not impinge on decisions of this nature, as a precedent threatens all our parishes. If, however, you accept the officer recommendation, I would ask you set stringent restrictions on the property's use, full-time residents or second home only. Please preclude holiday letting and online BB businesses use, as this will only encourage further projects in search of a profit. That's the response from Councillor Harry Brathwaite.
Thank you. Very thorough, as I expect from Councillor Brathwaite. Just one point though. Can we just go back to those air photographs? Because it appears to me that there were existing buildings which this replaces. So it's new development, only the fact that it's a modern rebuild of some buildings that were there before. So it's not enlarging the overall footprint of the site. Is that correct? Observation?
Yeah. So it is slightly larger in footprint out from what was there, but not by a substantial amount.
Okay, so we're not looking at a new build in the normal sense of the word. We're looking at a replacement for part of a dwelling.
Yeah, so it's a replacement and slight enlargement of them existing structures.
Okay, thank you. Who wishes to go first then? Councillor Toy. Councillor Holiday.
I'll kick it off then, Mr. Chair. First, I'm pleased to see it in the conditions, and actually Councillor Lathwaite put it there, the occupancy restrictions, that we keep that tight on there because there's a danger of creep on something like this. Yeah, in terms of conserving and enhancing, in a way, you need people around to have some skin in the game that want to conserve and enhance it. So I kind of, yeah, it's whether you accept the visual impact and whether we're doing enough mitigation, I think, in this case, for something that was there. I think on balance, I think officers have got it right, provided we got the right conditions in there to ensure that we do protect it and we put these restrictions on there. So again, I'd be happy to propose, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holiday.
Thank you, Chair. Could you show again that photograph of the building from the inland as it is and show us what the height of the proposed building is versus what it's been put up? It was one of the last pictures you showed us. That one was good. Can you show us what height, indicate roughly what height the proposed building would be? With reference to some
Yeah, it'd be
shrubbery or
to
something?
give you something solid to say, right, this is where the ridge line is going to be. Just taking it from that photo.
Presumably it will be lower on the
It's
main dwelling.
yeah, so the ridge line does sit lower than the main dwelling, and obviously will sit lower than what is currently there on site.
Okay, can I just remind people that landscaping isn't, there's no national or local policy that landscaping is there for screening. It's not there to screen something that's unattractive. That's what an inspector recently said. If this is approved, can the glass be via reduced visible light transmission, given that it's an extremely sensitive site? I think this is one of the most sensitive sites we've dealt with in terms of everything, actually, but light pollution is really important. Thank you.
So I've had discussions with the applicant, and if it's something that the committee require that there is a condition regarding the VLT on the glazing, that is something we can secure via condition.
Are you suggesting that we need that within the recommendation, councillor?
Yes, thank you.
Does anybody disagree with that? In which case, we'll add that to the recommendation, please. Anybody else? Nope. Oh, there he is. Put your hand right up, Robert.
I agree with Councillor Toy, and I'd like to second.
Okay, thank you.
I think, and the report was very clear, showing the different photos. Thank you.
Okay, if nobody else has anything to add, we have a proposer, councillor Toy, seconder, councillor MacDonald, and we'll go to the vote, please now.
Councillor Boyle? 4. Councillor Fisher?
4.
Councillor Hankins? Councillor Heinrich?
4.
Councillor Holiday? Councillor MacDonald?
4.
Councillor Patterson?
Against.
Councillor Ringer?
4.
Councillor Toy?
4.
Councillor Barley?
4.
Councillor Vickers?
4.
That's carried, Chairman.
Thank you. The application is approved. It's 5 to 11. We'll take a short 10-minute break. And I mean 10 minutes. Bring your coffee back in if you must. Right path, yes.